What's good, YouTube? Welcome back to another video. It's Lito. Today we're gonna react to a video by David Senra on his podcast named Founders Podcast. So the video name is How to Run Down a Dream. So I'm gonna put the link in the description for the podcast, and yeah, y'all can tap in by yourself too if you want to see the raw uncut version. And this is a really interesting podcast, and I have no idea what this is going to be about. Let me see the description. It says How to Succeed and Thrive in a Career You Love by Bill Gurley. I don't know who Bill is, but that's the thing. That's the beauty with David Senra. Every time you listen to one of his videos, you're going to learn a lot. So let's get straight into it.
Sam was born in the Netherlands, where his father was working at the time, but he grew up mostly in Marlow, Oklahoma, a town with a population just under 5,000. Sam's dad worked for an oil and gas company. Sam was gifted with intelligence and was his high school's valedictorian. From an early age, he loved numbers. He loved math. He was fascinated by the power of exponential growth. At the University of Oklahoma, he majored in finance. He loved sports. He briefly considered becoming a coach, but if you had asked him at the time, Sam probably would have told you he wanted to become the CEO of an industrials company or something like that. After his freshman year, he applied for an internship at Conoco. He was invited in for an interview, and it was all going well until the interviewer asked Sam where he imagined he would be in 5 years. Sam was honest. He said he figured he would go to business school. The interviewer was like, "What? You don't want to work at Conoco in 5 years?" And Sam said, "No, definitely not. I'm not interested in that." Instead, he interned in the accounting group of Ernst & Young, which happened to be the world leader in providing third-party opinions.
Hold up.
On the purchase of professional sports teams, giving Sam some early exposure to the world of sports business. After he graduated, Sam was offered a job at Bain Capital. He was the first University of Oklahoma student ever hired by Bain. He enjoyed the work at Bain. It was long hours of rigorous analytical work. He liked to bring large amounts of data to important decisions. About 18 months into his time at Bain, Sam was at lunch with some other young analysts and two men he considered mentors. The two older men went around the room asking the young analysts, if you could do anything, any job in the world, what would you do? Most of the answers were something along the lines of private equity or CEO. When they got to Sam, he just said, sports GM. It was the first time he verbalized this idea, but it had been forming in his mind for a while. I remember they laughed at me.
It makes sense, you're studying finance, you're into sports, combine the two, and always had an interest into being CEO. I feel like it's a great fit. Say people gonna laugh at him, but if you don't laugh at your dreams, they don't laugh at your goals. It's because your goals and your dreams are not big enough.
Made me so mad, Sam said. At the time Sam said this, almost nobody was bringing the tools of data analytics into the world of professional sports. Then in 2002, the Boston Red Sox hired Theo Epstein, an espoused fan of advanced data analytics, as the team's general manager, making the 28-year-old Epstein the youngest GM in baseball history. As Sam was thinking about all of this, the author Michael Lewis published the book Moneyball, which is a look inside the innovative...
Yeah, I was going to say, it because I saw the movie recently, and the story about, bringing data analytics into sports was really reminded me of something.
Approach of Oakland Athletics
so
general manager Billy Beane to assemble a competitive baseball team on a small budget. Sam read Moneyball in 2 days.
Great movie, by the way.
He loved everything about it. He could not stop thinking about it. Sam decided he was going to quit his lucrative job at Bain and start working towards his dream of becoming a general manager. When he told his parents, they confessed that they thought he was crazy. At this time, in every meeting Sam had, he would give his 1-minute spiel about wanting to disrupt professional sports by using data to make better decisions. In all these meetings, you could just see their eyes roll, Sam said. And so at this time, Sam starts going to business school at Stanford. At Stanford Graduate School of Business, Sam was able to take a sports management class for the first time. He also reached out to Parug Marathoth, the former Bain analyst who was already working with the 49ers. Sam had never met him before, but told him in an email that he had heard of him, that he thought his path was interesting, and that he'd been thinking a lot about this and would love to ask him some questions. Parag agreed to meet. We went and ate burritos across the street from Stanford, Sam told me. And I didn't ask him 20 questions. I asked him 200. While attending Stanford, Sam also met with Billy Beane, the age general manager at the center of Moneyball. He spent time with Michael Lewis. During his first year at Stanford, Sam also sent both emails and physical letters to NFL franchises all over the country, offering to work as an unpaid intern in the front office.
What they say about most successful people, they say they ask the most questions. That's one thing that comes a lot. When you hear stories about successful people, is that they are really curious.
Suggested that he could bring a new way of thinking about value in the salary cap era. His pitch was simple. I can help you. You have a limited pile of chips and you need to turn it into as many wins as you can. I can help you reduce risk and boost return, or both. I'll be in your town, we should talk. When spring break came around, most of his fellow students went to places like Aruba or Cancun. But Sam was focused on his goal. Instead of a trip to the beach, he went on what he calls a road show on Southwest Airlines. He visited 5 or 6 different football teams that week, mostly to introduce himself. I was just trying to get a foot in the door, Sam said. One of those teams was the Houston Texans. Sam was invited to intern at the team's front office. The initial internship lasted 8 weeks, but the team asked Sam to stick around during his second year of business school, which meant Sam had to fly back and forth from Palo Alto to Houston several times a week. But Sam was willing to take every chance to be in the building. He asked questions as often as he could without burdening anyone. In most meetings, he didn't say anything at all. I've had a few conversations with him that were like that. I'm talking about Sam Hinkie, by the way, which I'll get you in 1 second. He spent most of his time building a software tool for the draft that could help the team evaluate each player's relative value in an effort to maximize return on draft day. With ample data, Sam could explain why a mid-second round draft pick is often half as valuable as a first-round pick, but at 10% of the cost. But the coaches were all set in their ways and resisted any new approach to personnel, especially from a baby-faced 26-year-old kid from Stanford. Sam realized that succeeding in his career would involve not just analysis, but also earning the right to influence these stakeholders in the team. This is what he said. Earning the right...
That's the thing, a lot of times you can have the skills, you can have the knowledge, you can have everything that's needed, and you can be also right. But at the end of the day, you're always going to have to deal with politics. So I guess he realized that, I know all of us, I've had faced, a situation like this where you were the right fit, you were you were right, everything is supposed to be going your way because this is what would benefit everyone in the long run. But because of politics, because you don't have as much influence that you should have, it's not gonna go that way right away, and then you gotta play into the game of politics and then earn your power, basically.
To get them to listen, to make good arguments, to realize the facts are on this side, and that it is in your best interest to do this for this particular goal. After he graduated Stanford, Sam had a 2-hour conversation with Les Alexander, who owned the Houston Rockets NBA franchise at the time. They talked about how data could be used to make better basketball decisions. Les was a bond trader in the 1980s, so when Sam talked about reducing risk and boosting returns, Les understood immediately. At just 27 years old, he was hired as a special assistant to the general manager. Sam and his wife moved to Houston and slept on an inflatable mattress while Sam worked from 6 a.m. until midnight every day. Within a year, Les Alexander hired Daryl Morey as the team's assistant GM. Daryl shared Sam's analytical philosophy. A year later, Daryl was promoted to general manager, making the Rockets the first NBA franchise to hire a GM dedicated to integrating advanced statistical analysis. Sam was promoted to vice president, making him the youngest VP in the league. Together, Daryl and Sam built the best basketball sports analytics department in the country. A few years later, Sam was invited to interview for the general manager job of the Philadelphia 76ers.
Often, you see, he became the best general manager at a young age. And a lot of times, when people face, issues with politics, they just stop there. But I think it's really worth it, to work on that side, because once you develop that skill of gaining that influence, getting that power and everything, then every time you have something good to bring to the world, like nothing was gonna stop you from doing that because you know how to gain political power in, you know, every sphere, like because everything is like interchangeable, like interconnected. So if you know how to do it in one sphere, you apply the principle from that sphere to another, you know, market, and then you repeat it. And as long as you know you're bringing something good, you're gonna be motivated enough to like gain that influence because you know that it's gonna benefit people at the end of the day, and that's gonna, you know, make you, that purpose is gonna drive you to do like Sam, where he would wake up at 6 a.m. and work until midnight. But if Sam didn't know at the bottom of his heart that he was bringing something good for everyone, then he probably would not be that motivated to wake up at 6 a.m. and work until midnight.
76ers. The conversation did not go well. We could not get on the same page in a bunch of ways, Sam told me, and I was aggressive about it in a bunch of ways that surprised them. And so I told them I couldn't come, and I didn't. Sam decided to stay in Houston for another year, but he made a few predictions for what would happen that year in Philadelphia, most of which came true. Impressed, the owners of the 76ers came knocking again. So in 2013, at the age of 35, almost exactly 10 years from the moment he told his parents he wanted to be a GM, Sam Hinkie was hired as the general manager of the Philadelphia 76ers. Sam's tenure in Philadelphia was complicated. Sam's time in his dream job was covered extensively in the media. He eventually left. So what do you do if you finally have your dream job and then lose it? Sam knew when he started his journey that a job as a general manager of a sports franchise could be tenuous. He knew that there was some personal risk involved with his rebuilding plan, and he knew that he needed to take some time to think about what he wanted to do next. He moved his family back to the Bay Area and started teaching a few courses at Stanford. He tells his students, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Use them in that proportion. That is the most hinky thing to say, and I'm sure he has said that to me multiple times. Sam also used this time to...
That's true. That's really true. Like being like an active listener is a huge skill. Like, you know, like if you, it's so much you can learn in like one conversation in one day if you just listen. And like if you listen to also to like all of the greats, they all have that trait. And not only do they listen, but on top of that, they integrate what they learn right away at the highest level.
Start his pathway towards a second dream job. And knowing Sam pretty well, this job is way more suited for who he is as a person. In 2020, Sam launched his own VC firm called 87 Capital. The name comes from a key moment in Robert Caro's Means of Ascent, which recounts Lyndon Johnson's 1948 Senate election victory, which he won by a margin of only 87 votes. I'm going to put the book down for 1 second. A few years ago, Sam was interviewed by my friend Patrick on his podcast, Invest Like the Best. And in that, he gave a great description of why he named his business 87 Capital. The description is only 2 sentences, but it's very deep. The name 87 Capital is from Means of Ascent, The Years of Lyndon Johnson by Robert Caro. These are the 2 sentences. One candidate wins by 87 votes and gets the presidency. The other candidate lost by 87 votes, but effectively wins back his life's work and his family. Back to the book. I've had the pleasure of knowing Sam for almost a decade now. He is one of the smartest people I know. Sam has been thoughtful and methodical at every stage. Yes, for sure. That's exactly how he is. He's earnest and direct. Yes, he is. He gives back. Yes. He teaches. He mentors. Yes, he's played this role in my life. He wants to help fellow dreamers. And he has never stopped learning. He is a voracious reader. He loves work.
Also, what I've noticed, you know, from highly successful people is people always say like, yeah, they give back, but also they go like, they always go the extra step to like elevate others on their level. Like it's really rare that like, you know, someone that, you know, level, status and everything, they push people down. Like they try to keep them down. Most of them, they try to bring people up. And some people think it's because you know, it's lonely, you know, getting to that level, and they trying to, you know, bring people up so they have people like-minded around them, and, you know, have a community, and, you know, feel more like part of something. And that could be reality. I don't know the truth behind it. Haven't reached that level yet, but I guess I'm gonna find
the
out.
People he works with now. This is a quote from Sam. I'm investing money on behalf of other people. I like them. I like them a lot. And that is meaningful in ways that I wouldn't have guessed. If one of them calls me, I'm excited to talk. I know our conversations will be fun and generative. And I didn't always have that with the people I worked for before. This is why I said this is actually his true dream job. Sam belongs in a world with infinite wins. I am surrounded by people that are really bright and
Also, the infinite game, infinite wins. Like, that's really a concept that comes back a lot in David Senra's podcast where he studies great founders. Like, all these great founders, they play infinite games with themselves. They don't play other people's games. They don't care about other people's wins. They know that their wins is not their losses. They know that their losses is not their wins. They know their wins is not your wins. You know, they play their own game. And playing your own infinite game is going to make it so you also have, like, also your own infinite rewards. There's no limits to, like, how much you can elevate. You know, only your own limits. And they know play on their own terms. They have much more control and much more ways to leverage, you know, how they elevate their life.
Really curious, and I'm curious about them. That is an excerpt from the book and the talk I'm going to talk to you about today, which is Running Down a Dream, How to Thrive in a Career You Actually Love. It is written by Bill Gurley. If you've been listening to Founders for a long time, you know I haven't shut up for many years. Probably like half a decade ago, I randomly discovered this talk on YouTube. The title of the talk is slightly different than the book. It's Running Down a Dream, How to Succeed and Thrive in a Career You Love. It's this talk from 2018 that Bill Gurley was giving to a bunch of MBA students. I said it multiple times. I think it's one of the best talks on YouTube. The reason I want to start there is because
I gotta go listen.
Have personally used ideas that I discovered in this talk to build this podcast. It is amazing how things can come full circle in your life. In the talk and in the book, Bill Gurley profiles a bunch of people. One of them is Sam Hinkie, who, as I'm using the ideas from this talk to build the podcast and to make it more valuable for people to listen to, Sam discovers the podcast, and we've built a relationship over the last several years. I consider him a close friend and kind of like an older brother to me. And so when I was thinking about starting this episode, I was like, I have to start here because it's all connected. And so what I want to do is I want to run down my notes. Most of the notes I'm going to read to you now are actually from the talk. The book is an expansion of that, and there's some people added to the book that are not in the talk, so I recommend buying the book and watching the video. And I think Bill does a great job of really bucketing everything in 5 main ideas. So I want to cover 3 people first. So Bill Gurley is studying 3 people that get to the top of their profession in vastly different domains at different points in history. And he says, I was inspired after studying the stories of 3 people that you might call luminaries. And I noticed an overlap pattern amongst them. So then he breaks down who these people are and what they did to run down a dream. And first he talks about why this is important. A dream job means you should chase a career where you have an immense passion. Immense passion is one of the most important phrases that Bill uses over and over again. His friend and partner says, life is a use it or lose it proposition. Most people only take one career path, but if you've got only one shot, why not do what makes you happy? And so then he starts running through this list of
so
people.
true.
The first one is a legendary college basketball coach.
Like, this last saying, like, I'm gonna replay it.
Position. Most people only take one career path, but if you've got only one shot, why not do what makes you happy? And so then he starts.
And, you know, why not do what makes you happy? And that's so true, because I always thought, like if you're not living the life you don't want to live right now, so why not sacrifice it for going for the life you want to live? And that's why, you know, like, this is gonna make the sacrifice that you make pursuing the life you want to build much more easier, because if you're not where you want to be at, then go ahead, go all into what you want to become and who you want to become.
Running through this list of 3 people. The first one is a legendary college basketball coach, Bobby Knight. And really what sticks out is just how bad do you want it? Like, how bad do you actually want to do this, and what lengths are you willing to do and are you willing to go to actually build a life and career that you love? Before we get back into the story, I want to tell you one of my favorite quotes I've ever read.
How bad you want it, it really translates to, like, what are you willing to sacrifice, you know? Are you willing to, you know, get better sleep so you have more energy? Or are you willing to, you know, eat healthy so that your brain works properly so when you go throughout the day? Are you willing to, you know, exercise? Are you willing to gain knowledge instead of, you know, doom scrolling? Are you willing to, you know, make your circle tighter and, you know, have the right people around you, and, you know, limiting the time you allow to, like, you know, people are like negative for you? Are you willing to, you know, put your mind in a more positive place and deal with the negative thoughts. Like all these sacrifices are really important. Really, like painting a picture of like how bad you want it is really how much you're willing to sacrifice to, build the life you want.
In any biography says, surround yourself with the smartest people you can find. When you see such a person, do all you can to get them on board. That extends your reach, and terrific people are usually fun.
And you say like surround yourself with the smartest people like you can, and not everybody is blessed to the point where you can like let's say David Samra, he right now he has access to like all the greatest founders in the world. He can have them on a call, he can have them on an interview face to face and everything, but he didn't start with having them in presence, but he started them by reading books. He started like connecting with them by reading books, and this is how he surrounded himself with great minds, is by reading books about them and like going through their stories and everything. And now we're doing the same thing by going to his podcast where he goes over their life journey. And that's why like what you consume is really like also what you surround yourself with, and the energy that's gonna come back to you. So if you can't access to like super smart people, like super successful people, like there's a lot of resources online accessible to like everyone for free, where you can surround yourself with great minds that have great discussion, has great reflections.
To work with, that reminded me of
and you maybe gonna say, oh, but I can't talk with them, but remember, we got 2 ears, 1 mouth, like he said. So just by listening and taking in the insights and then integrating them and then applying them in your life, you're doing the right thing. You don't have to talk right away. When you talk, maybe it's to teach, maybe it's to exchange, but that's like an extra. If you just listen, you're gaining a lot.
Jeff Bezos. From day one in his very first shareholder letter, Jeff would emphasize the importance of having the very best team. He said, setting the bar high in our approach to hiring has been and will continue to be the single most important element of Amazon's success. Jeff would tell you that you have to build a team that pursues the A players, and that is exactly what Ramp did. Ramp is the presenting sponsor of this podcast, and Ramp has the most talented technical team in their industry. That means when you use Ramp, you now have top-tier technical talent and some of the best AI engineers working on your behalf 24/7 to automate and improve all of your business's financial operations, and they do this on a single platform. Ramp gives your business easy-to-use corporate cards for your entire team, automated expense reporting, and cost control. Ramp's corporate cards are fully programmable. The longer you use Ramp, the more efficient your company becomes. This is important because, as Sam Walton said in his autobiography, you can make a lot of different mistakes and still recover if you run an efficient operation, or you can be brilliant and still go out of business if you're too inefficient. Ramp helps you run an efficient organization. As one customer review said, Ramp is like having a teammate who you never need to check in on because they have it handled. Make history's greatest entrepreneurs proud by going to ramp.com to learn how they can help your business save time and money today. That is ramp.com. And so in Bobby Knight's case,
like I'm working on some things behind the scenes, and then just by being an active listener of David Sanara's podcast, a lot of times Ramp sponsorship always comes on. So I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do my research on the company. And that's like, if you have a company, if you're building a business and everything, like this is really something you should look into in the long run. I'm not gonna go into more depth and everything, but just look into their company, and it's definitely something that's going to be useful for you.
He becomes an assistant coach, basketball coach, after he graduates college. But this is what Bill says. From my point of view, it isn't what happened inside the 4 walls of the gym where they practiced every day that was most important. Instead, it's what he did outside. In the first 5 years of his coaching career, he befriended 5 of the top basketball minds. And here's just one example of how he was building relationships. For 2 of these coaches, he went to a coach's luncheon where they knew, where he knew.
That's so true, because, like, what you do outside is really gonna, it's almost as more important than what you do on the court, because, if you gain the knowledge outside, you treat your body right, you rest properly, you're focused on what you do, then when you come on the court, all these factors are going to translate. That focus is going to translate, that nutrition, that energy, that focus, everything is going to translate into what you're gonna do on the court. And it's the same whether it's the court, whether you're in business, or whether whatever you're doing, whatever you're pursuing, art, music, whatever. Like everything you're gonna do outside of it is gonna come back to when you go lock into your craft.
They were going to be and beg them to let him sit next to him. He would then keep following up and spending time with both of these coaches. He didn't stop there. Then he starts building a relationship with one of the greatest basketball minds at the time, this guy named Pete Newell. He also intentionally built relationships with other coaches, not just basketball coaches. He became friends with the University of Michigan football coach. He meets a young Bill Parcells and studies him. He becomes friends with and studies the swimming coach at Indiana University. At age 31, Bobby Knight becomes the head coach at Indiana University. 5 years later, they went undefeated both in the regular season and postseason and won the national championship. That has never been repeated since in over 4 decades. His career in Indiana, he accomplished a lot. 3 national championships, 4 Coach of the Year awards, 11 Big Ten titles. When he retired, he had 902 victories. He had the most wins of any coach at the time. Pete Newell, who he sought out as a mentor and somebody to learn from, would later induct Bobby Knight into the Hall of Fame. So that's a brief overview. We're going to get to how they do this. I'm just giving you a brief overview of the first 3 people, and then we'll dive into what I think is the most interesting part of the talk in the book, which is essentially like this blueprint almost of like how to run down a dream. So the next person is Bob Dylan. Bob loves music from an early age. He gets his first guitar when he's 10 years old. When he's a little older, he falls in love with folk music. Over the course of 8 or 9 months, he studied every folk album he could. He didn't have any money, so at the time, he'd walk into the record store and listen in a booth. He would do that for hours and hours and hours. He became friends with other people that also liked folk music, but that had money. He would go to their house and listen to their entire record collection. And then he does something, which Pill says is probably the most ambitious action he's ever heard of somebody that was trying to pursue as their dream job. He hitchhiked from Minneapolis to New York City. He had a guitar, a suitcase, and $10. That is a 1,200-mile trip. If you ask him today why he did it, he would say he was chasing the performers. He was listening to them in Minnesota, but the performers he was listening to were in New York City, and he wanted to see them. And there was really one person he wanted to see, which is Woody Guthrie. Woody Guthrie had become his hero. I read Bob Dylan's autobiography, which is excellent. I did an episode on it. It's episode 259 if you ever want to listen to it. Bob Dylan talks about in that book that he devoured Woody Guthrie's biography. So he finds Woody, he builds a relationship with him, and then Bob Dylan is hanging out at the epicenter for what he wants to do at the time. I think this is in Greenwich Village, if I'm not mistaken, in New York City. It was the epicenter of folk music at the time. So he would sit in all these venues for hours upon hours and just study what other artists were doing. Years later, one of the artists would say, he could perform any one of our songs like us. He was able to make a complete accurate copy. He was studying. He eventually gets signed. He releases his first album. It does okay. But it's his second album that really makes him a star. In 1963, he released The Freewheelin' Bob Dylan. Since he started, he sold over 100 million records. He's won 11 Grammys. He won an Oscar and an Emmy. He's inducted to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. He won a Medal of Freedom Award, and he won a Nobel Prize in Literature. And then the third person that Bill was studying was Danny Meyer. I actually did an episode on Danny's fantastic autobiography. It's like probably 9 years ago. It's episode 20. So Danny grew up loving food, loving restaurants. He was a complete obsessive. But it took him a while to make the connection that he should just work in the field that he was intensely interested in. And so at the time, he's working for this company called Checkpoint. They would manufacture those things.
And that's a lot of people are living that thing, you know. Like, I understand because you got bills to pay, you got responsibilities and everything. So a lot of times people sacrifice their passion, sacrifice their dream and everything, just so they can, you know, make it day to day. But, you know, the universe is always going to, even though it's not going to be easy at first and you're going to have to go through a hardship, it's going to reward you for, you know, taking that leap of faith. And it's like counterintuitive because a lot of times you got to go against the odds, against the data, against everything that everyone is saying. And even while you're going to start, it's going to look crazy, it's going to look stupid. But then on the long run, you know, it's like always pays off.
If you ever go in like a store and they have the things they attach to clothes, you can't
when you
steal
don't
them.
give up.
And he was making incredible amounts of money. I think at the time it was like $125,000 a year. I think inflation adjusted would be like, you know, $400,000 a year. And he has this idea that he's going to go to law school, even though he's not interested in it at all. And the night before he's going to take the LSAT, he goes out to eat with his uncle, his aunt, and his grandmother. And he's talking about this. He said, I'm going to take the LSAT, become a lawyer. And his uncle replied, well, you just stop it. Why don't you go open a restaurant? You know that's what you're supposed to do. Danny says this comment by his uncle caught him off guard, but it woke him up. He wakes up the next day, takes the LSAT, but never applies to a single school. He then quits his job as a salesman, where he's making all this money, and then works in a restaurant for 1/10 of the salary. He'd work in the restaurant during the day, and then at night he starts taking classes. So he takes a wine class. He makes a list of 12 icons that he respects in the restaurant industry. He starts studying them. He creates a notebook for each and every one of them. What makes them special? What do they do that's unique? He studies their recipes. Then he goes to Europe and works in a restaurant there for free.
You know, the best thing about, David's podcast is because he read so many books. He knows so many stories, and so many stories are like that. It's like people that, they live their normal life, everything's going good, but they're not pursuing their dream. And then all of a sudden they're like, okay, I'm gonna pursue my dream. They give up everything for that dream. They sacrifice, they start from zero, and then they build it up and they make it. And if it was, one person, 2 person, 3 person, you'd be like, oh, it's luck, it's luck, it's luck. But then there's so many stories, and it's like, it just shows you, like, when you apply all these principles, when you lock in, when you stay disciplined and consistent and build for the long run, you are going to make it. And it's so many stories, there's so many people, so it's like, why not you? And the only reason it wouldn't be you is because you wouldn't go for it, and you'd give up. So if you want it to be you, just go for it and don't give up.
And one of the restaurants he worked at, he actually had to pay $500 a month to work there. So he goes from making $125,000 a year all the way down to $12,000 a year to now negative $25,000. He's burning through his savings. But at every place he goes, he studies and watches every single thing that's going on. He watches the chef. He watches the recipes. He goes with them on sourcing trips to see how they pick up their food. He takes tons of notes. He studies the decor inside the restaurant. He studies the wine list inside the restaurant. He gets back to the United States, spends another 6 or 7 months.
That's the type of dedication it needs. Like, it's like almost like, nowadays, like, when you're so focused on your goals, like, people are going to call you autistic. Like, this is really what's going on. Like, when you have a deep passion for something, like, you're going to be so locked in, so focused. People want to see that you're moving, like, not normally, which is exactly how you don't want to move. You don't want to move normally. You want to, do great things. Don't want to do normal things. And people are going to sense that, and, they're going to be like, oh, like, I think he's, like, a little bit autistic, maybe on that spectrum and everything. But no, that's really, like, deep passion, how it's expressed. It's like through deep focus. You're so immersed into what you're building, you're so immersed into what you're doing that it feels like, out of this world, like, but this is that level of attention to details is what you need. And when you're going to find that thing that you love, deeply passionate about, it's going to come naturally.
Searching over 100 locations to find the very best location to launch his first restaurant. He is 27 years old when he opens Union Square Cafe in New York City. And Bill says, I love this quote from Danny, I spent nearly 2 years doing the best work ever as a student. Think about what he's saying. Danny's most proud of the studying he did on his own, not the studying he did in college. He viewed this as the best work he had ever done as a student. Danny would go on to launch 16 high-end restaurants in New York City. 4 have won Michelin stars. Several years after that, he founds Shake Shack, which is now a multi-billion-dollar public company.
Wow.
And so now Bill does an incredible job of essentially tying everything together over these 5 guidelines. This is really the heart of what I want to talk to you about. And real quick, before we get back into this incredible book, this incredible talk, I need to tell you about Vanta. Vanta helps your company prove you're secure so more customers will use your product or service. You can think of Vanta as your always-on AI-powered security expert who scales with you. The more your business grows, the more complex your security needs get. And that complexity can turn into chaos, and Vanta helps tame that chaos. Vanta automates compliance, continuously monitors your controls, and gives you a single source of truth for compliance and risk. So whether you're a fast-growing startup like Cursor or an enterprise company like Snowflake, Vanta fits easily into your existing workflows. This allows you to keep growing a company that your customers can trust. Many companies won't sign contracts unless you're certified, and this is causing you to lose out on sales. That is why the average Vanta customer reports a 526% return on investment after becoming a Vanta customer. Automate your compliance, security, and trust with Vanta. Vanta will help you win trust, close deals, and stay secure faster and with less effort. Go to vanta.com/founders and you will get $1,000 off. That is vanta.com/founders. So he says, I'd read all these stories independently and noticed there was a similar strain that was running through each and every one of the stories. There are 5 major strains. Number 1, find your passion. My first piece of advice would be to find your passion. Pick a profession in which you have a deep personal interest. There is nothing that's going to make you more successful than if you love doing what you're doing. You're going to work harder than anyone else at it because it doesn't feel like work. It's going to feel like fun. I think this is the most important decision you could possibly make in a career. Make sure you have an immense, there's that word again, an immense passion for what you're doing. This should be your personal passion. Not your parents, not your sisters, not your family. It needs to be something that you're doing on your own. Do not make this decision based on status and compensation. There are a lot of high-profile careers that make a lot of money, and they are generally perceived to be areas where successful people go. If you run at those things and don't have a passion for them, you're going to burn out. And this is one of my favorite things.
It's true. And also, like, finding your passion is not gonna come right away. You know, it's like you gotta try things on to find your passion. Sometimes you're gonna think, oh, this is my passion, and then you're gonna go into it and you're gonna realize, okay, this is not my passion. But just by doing things and, you know, actually going out to try and find your passion, you're gonna narrow it down to what is actually your passion. And once you have it narrowed down, then you're gonna have focus so like intense that, you know, nothing's gonna stop you, because you're not gonna know what is actually something that you should focus on and what is a distraction.
So true. And everybody I talk to, you cannot fake passion. Someone else that really loves that job will outrun you. Someone else has a deep passion for whatever career path you're going down, and they're going to smoke you if you don't have it yourself. Here's an example of what you do when you have.
That's true, also true, because when you have that passion, like, you know, all of a sudden you're gonna have like an energy burst from the morning to the sundown. But when you don't have that passion, and if you're just doing it for the money, for the fame, for the glory and everything, then everything that you're gonna do is gonna be like super draining. You're gonna be, oh, I have to do this. Oh, now I have to do this. And then you're only gonna be happy when you're gonna get the money, or when you're gonna get the glory, or when you get your fame. You're only gonna be happy and have energy when you get at these moments of fame, moments when you get money, moments when you get glory or whatever it is that motivates you. But when you have passion for the whole sphere that, you know, you're living through, then like your whole life you have much more energy than just chasing these little moments.
This just immense, deep passion. Bill starts to quote Bobby Knight. Bobby Knight says, "The key is not the will to win. Everybody has that. It is the will to prepare to win that is important. Everybody has the will to win. What people don't have is the will to practice." This is a test of whether or not you're actually.
That's true, and you can see it when, you know, people, you know, like are not consistent in what they're doing. You know, like, you know, consistency is really like, you know, winning, like preparing yourself to win every day. Because, you know, the big moments, you know, is not the big moments. The big stage often is like one event, but that moment is often repeated every day for these people. So let's say you got like NBA finals and everything, like, you know, they practice every day, they have games almost every day, they stretch, they, you know, prepare mentally and every time, you know. And you might think, oh, it's just a regular season game, or it's just a practice session, or it's just one stretching session, or it's just one film session. But then when the big stage, like, you know, the final game comes on, you know, like they just repeating what they did every day. And, you know, because they repeated it every day, now when they come on the big stage, it's just time to, you know, it's time to win. But the fact that they were willing to prepare to win every day made it so that they won. And those who didn't prepare to win every day, yes, they wanted to win in the final, but they didn't want to prepare to win, so most likely not gonna win.
pursuing your dream job. So whatever you would consider studying or for your work or your practice for your work, do you actually enjoy that part? Do you enjoy the preparation? Everybody enjoys winning. Do you enjoy the preparation? Number 2, hone your craft. Again, I think it's obvious if you listen to a bunch of these episodes. Like
I'm gonna really listen to that.
These ideas.
I'm gonna really re-listen to this podcast, off camera and everything, and take notes, because these are really like key points like that. When you're gonna apply them to your life, it's gonna take you to the next level.
Is extremely passionate about history, reading, biographies, podcasts, entrepreneurship. Those are my main passions. Foundership sits at the intersection. If you had a Venn diagram, founders should sit right inside that. This is another hugely important thing. Hone your craft. Hone your craft constantly. It's extremely important to be obsessive about understanding everything you possibly can about your craft. So that's number 2, hone your craft. This is so good. I think about this quote all the time in half years. Consider it an
thinking about like hone your craft is, going into like depth in your craft. Like there's in many craft, there's like many layers. Let's say content creation. There's many layers. You got the long form content, then you got the short form content, and then you got the editing on top of it, the captions, the description, the hashtags, and then after that you got the algorithms and the thumbnails. You got so many things that you can master that are within your craft, and this is like what they call like own your craft. And it's the same thing with business. Like business, it has its own structure with many layers, and knowing every layer and how to put it to work as best as possible is like owning your craft.
Obligation. Hold yourself accountable. Keep learning over time. Study the history and know the pioneers. How many times have you and I had conversations? There's a single person we profiled on the podcast so far that got to the top of their profession that didn't study and learn from the great people that came from them.
That's true. That's super true, because like you can take anyone that you look up to because they're one of the greats in their domain, and like it's rare that they didn't have no one like that inspired them to get there. There was most likely someone else, either if it was another domain or in the same domain that they were looking up to, and they followed their principle to get to that point.
Bro, nobody does that. It is the bedrock and this is why. It is the bedrock foundation for what you're going to build upon. And it will help you in networking, that you're able to talk the language of the people that came before you. Strive to know more than anyone else about your particular craft. This is really important. He's not saying you have to be the smartest person. You don't have to be the most brilliant. You just have to collect more information. It is quite doable to be the most knowledgeable. It is possible to gather more information than somebody else. And so here's a few examples of collecting more information. One of the pieces of advice he has is like, depending on what you're doing, you might want to go to the epicenter where it is. In Bobby Knight's case, he goes and travels and finds the coaches. And so he actually talks about this. He goes, in 1972, I went to Pete Newell's house, and I sat down in the middle of the floor with a stack of 3x5 cards that he used to diagram each separate option. So he's filling out 74 cards on all these different plays. And he says, hey, Pete, will you come through these, work through these with me? And Pete did, and they both learned from it. For Bob Dylan, he would call himself a musical expeditionary. And so Bill actually goes and looks up what's the definition of an expeditionary. An expedition is to travel for scientific research or exploration. That's what Bob Dylan was doing. There was no one who knew more about folk music than Bob Dylan did when he broke out. He knew more than anybody else. And he did that by collecting more information. Danny Meyer, from his book, Setting the Table, says the same thing. He's going to set up this restaurant in New York City. It's a barbecue place. This is what he does before it. He goes to Texas and eats at every single barbecue restaurant he can find. He studies what he calls the elements of barbecue. Ribs, brisket, pulled pork, chicken, coleslaw, beans, etc. Then he takes a road trip through North Carolina. And he says, during this road trip, I tasted 14 variations of chopped pork, each defined by subtle and dramatic differences in texture, the degree and type of smoke used, the amount of tomato and vinegar in the sauce, how much heat was applied to the meat, and how well or how much or how little crackling got chopped up and tossed in. That is the level of detail that Danny thinks about for food. That is what it means to study, to hone your craft. You understand more about it than anyone else. And then he ends the session, which, again, with a quote that I've been thinking about forever, and I try to apply myself. Information's freely available. That's the good news. The bad news is that you now have zero excuse for not being the most knowledgeable person in any subject you want.
That's exactly what I was thinking, and he said it. I don't even need to add anything else. He just said it perfectly.
Zero excuse. Immense passion. Hold yourself accountable. These are the things that just, at least they just locked into my brain. I like things that are simple but not easy. These are very simple ideas, but they're obviously not easy to do because so few people do it. That's why they're valuable.
That's a key right there. Simple but not easy. Simple but not easy. This means you can do it. Everybody can do it, but can do it. That's the key word. You can do it, but not everybody's gonna do it. So if you wanna, be great at something, you're probably gonna have to do some things that people don't want to do, but you can do.
Idea number 3, develop mentors in your field. Take every chance you can to meet people that are known for success in the field that you've chosen. And again, use that example. How important is this? Bob Dylan starts with a guitar, $10 in his thumb, and he hitchhikes to New York City, 1,200 miles just to get this done. When you meet these people, treat them with respect, learn from them, document what you hear, and share it with others. Ask them all the questions you can. Try to get the mentors interested in your own development. Send them notes. Tell them.
And nowadays with the internet, this is so accessible. Like, you got great people with podcasts. You can access interviews. Sometimes they're live. Sometimes they do YouTube videos, and everything. And this is all the information that you can gather. Sometimes you don't have access to a private conversation, but through their interaction with the world, through the interaction with themselves and others, you can gather data and then extract principles and apply it into your life so you can better yourself. But make sure that you integrate it into your own life and just not consume. You want to consume and extract the data, the principle, and then you want to produce as well.
When you use their advice, then you use their advice to be successful. Send them gifts when you've had accomplishments. Get them bought into you. Never stop pursuing mentors, even after you're wildly successful. This is advice to be used not just at the beginning of your career, but all the way through it. And so Bill gives an example. Bill's a investor.
That's facts, because even if you're successful in something, you're probably really, really not good at something else. And you always want to keep, elevating and, staying humble, because, you can be excellent in one area in your life, but you're still a noob or beginner in something else. And just staying humble through your success is going to make you a much better person.
Venture capitalist in his day job. He says, I had the remarkable fortune this year in my 20th year as an investor to meet Stan Druckenmiller and Howard Marks. They're two people I've admired for a very long time. I read everything that they wrote. I got to sit down with both of them for a couple hours and talk about investing. It was awesome. The things that they pushed me on changed some of the actions that I take today in my work. Number 4, embrace peer relationships in your field. Develop deep relationship with peers that are on the same journey as you. Have discussions and debates about what defines greatness in the field. Don't be afraid to argue passionately. This is one thing I wish someone had told me when I got my MBA. Everybody said network. And I thought it was a social activity. I thought they were telling me, oh, you need to develop your social skills. And then they want me to randomly talk to people I have no similar interests with. What I've come to realize is, no, it's not about that. It's about connecting with people that you have the most overlap with, because you're able to help each other along the way, along the journey. So my entire life, if I'm not spending time with founders, I'm talking to other podcasters. I have literally got on a plane and flown across the country just to have lunch or dinner with somebody else that does the same thing that I do, just to learn from them. Embrace peer relationships in your field. And then I have a network of podcasters that I'm friends with that have built relationships, and this is exactly what we do. What he says next. Always share best practices and don't worry about any proprietary knowledge. It is not a zero-sum game. It's just a good trade. It's just smart. If you get caught up in worrying about it, you're going to fail in advance. It's so important. The activity of sharing with mentors and peers will lead to many positive things that will help you go up.
That's true. And also doing that is you gotta believe that the world is abundant. So when you try to gatekeep, at the end of the day, you're just gatekeeping yourself, because you're blocking the flow of information and the universe. You get what you give, basically. So if you give abundantly, knowing that you don't even have to know that it's gonna come back to you, but if you give abundantly, more is gonna come to you. So when you try to gatekeep, at the end of the day, you're gonna get kept too. It's what goes around comes around. So never be afraid of putting others on game. And yeah,
celebrate your peers' accomplishments as if they were.
And sometimes the game won't get returned from that person right away, but it's gonna get returned from the world. That's why you gotta keep your mind open. You know, sometimes you're gonna give game to someone, and then they're gonna be okay. They're gonna hoard it and give nothing back. It's okay if that's how they are. It's okay. One, you've learned how they are as a person, and two, you've done the right thing, and the right thing's gonna get done to you some way somehow.
Own. And peers don't need to be in your exact field. So he gives an example. Bobby Knight sat down and developed a peer relationship with a swimming coach, and he gained knowledge from that relationship that he used to coach basketball. And then number 5 is always be gracious and pay it forward. I don't think this is exactly what Bill Gurley means in this section, but something that I thought about and really kind of motivated me and changed my perspective on this. I was listening to a podcast one time, and this guy said, everybody knows this idea of like being a go-getter. You're chasing after something, you have a goal, and you're getting after it. But he says he tries to be a go-giver. And he noticed something, that the more service he put out into the world, the more he did for other people, the more products he made that made other people's lives better, the more that came back to him automatically. And I think this is really important. He says always give the majority of the credit to the mentors and peers that helped you along the way. It's the right thing to do, and it keeps you from being an asshole when you're successful. Send letters, send gifts. Anytime you accomplish something in your career, take the time to send messages back to the people that helped you. Eventually, you have to pay this back. Become the mentor for others that are coming up the ladder. And so Bobby Knight talks about learning this from Pete Newell.
That's why I almost in every vlog, every video I make, because right now I'm actively, and even before I was actively listening to Founders Podcast, and now David's Cinema platform where he interviews great founders. I always give him his flowers, and every time it could be like a quote from another creator, it could be something from someone else in my circle and everything. I always give them flowers because that I just feel like that's just the right things to do. There's nothing even more to it. Just give people their flowers.
Because when Pete Newell represented to me in this case was a responsibility a teacher has to share with others. I never held anything back at clinics or in conversations with fellow coaches, especially the young ones. And he gives an example. Shortly after one of his sessions with Pete Newell, and the next year Indiana's playing one of Pete's teams. They end up in a tournament together. Bobby uses the stuff that Pete taught him and beat Pete on the field. He recalled that notion in his book, and he said, if Pete was willing to do that for me, I've got to do that for everyone else. And it's beautiful how all this connects, because one of the people he did this for was a young Coach K. And I would say his name, but I can't pronounce Coach K's last name. Bobby Knight mentored Coach K, and eventually Coach K passes Bobby Knight on the all-times career wins list. And when Coach K was getting inducted into the Hall of Fame, he asked Bobby Knight to induct him. And so Danny Meyer has a great quote from his book about this. I am convinced that you get what you give, and you get more by giving more. Generosity of spirit and a generous approach to problem solving are, with few exceptions, the most effective way to earn lasting goodwill for your business. And then Bill does a great job tying all this together. In the conclusion, I don't think a single one of these people started what they're doing for money. In each and every story, they were chasing a passion and a dream that allowed them to study. Go back to what Bobby Knight said about needing the will to practice. They did this on their own. Danny Meyer uses a phrase in his book called professional research. It is an interesting phrase because most of
the thing about money is I've learned that from Founders Podcast too, is money always comes as a function of the story. So if you focus on building up your story, building up your legacy, the money will come. If you're just doing it for the money, the money is it might come, but then it's gonna be the end of it. And you gotta treat money almost like a person. The money doesn't want to be bored. The money don't want to just come and sit there, and get wasted and everything. The money wants to live an interesting story. The money wants to have a good legacy. So you gotta put it into that way. So you build the story, you build a legacy, and the money will come. It's really just a tool to keep the flow of the story going.
Just think about the studying and the research we do around a curriculum and a teacher. It is what you do on your own that is most important. Do you go home at night and study to improve your own skill set? Most people don't. I think that's interesting. And so the list is, number 1, pick a career about which you have an immense passion. Number 2, be obsessive about learning in your field. Number 3, develop mentors in your field. Number 4, embrace peer relationships in your field. And number 5, always be gracious and pay it forward. And Bill says, I stole the title of this speech from Tom Petty, who was once asked what advice he'd have for people if he were giving it. Run down a dream.
That was a great video by David Senra. So again, I'm gonna put the link in the description. The name of the video is "How to Run Down a Dream" by Founders Podcast. So thank you, David. Thank you, David, another time for this amazing video. Your podcasts are very underrated, even though you have 2011K subscribers. You deserve millions, but this is what comes when you're ahead of your time. You gotta be patient enough for the people to catch up with you, because it's not everybody that has the blessing of being ahead of your time, and you're doing that. You're going ahead of the time. You're laying the foundations. You're laying the path, and people are following the path and growing within it, and creating their own path off of that, and that's beautiful. Thank you. And your work is literally like eternal, because these videos are going to be up forever. On the impact that you've created from these videos are going to be up forever. I'm basically giving you flowers because you truly deserve it. Thank you.